Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Safety and Security Subcommittee meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 31st, 2022, and the time is 12:05 p.m. Can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
First, I'd like to start by introducing the members of the Safety and Security Subcommittee. We have myself. Also in attendance is Carol Ty and John Kingston. Other committee members that are in attendance are on Zoom, Aisha Milbury-Ellis, and in person, Ms. Stacy Bronson-Rizzo and Mr. Ferrante. We also have Assistant Superintendent Danielle Macaba, Superintendent Diane Kelly, and we have our school resource officers, Officer Singer, Officer Brennis, and Officer Intracola. Did I pronounce that correctly? Internicola. I always get that incorrect. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I would like to say we called this meeting, with the tragic events that did occur last week in Texas. We all have had an outreach from our community and our parents asking about, safety and security in our own schools. And, we try to reassure everyone safety and security is always of the utmost importance, and we do make this a top priority. Our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Gallucci, who was unable to attend today, does meet with our school resource officers on a bi-weekly basis to get updates of any events or any occurrences within the schools. Where Dr. Gallucci was unable to attend, we did ask our school resource officers to come and help us out with any questions that might occur. And I do want the community to know that we are planning, once we get dates available, to have another safety and security meeting on a larger scale that also includes Captain O'Hara, who works very closely with Assistant Superintendent Gallucci and our school resource officers, and we'll also be inviting our Chief of Police and our Chief of Fire. Like I said, those dates are being coordinated as we speak. So right now, I would like to start with any of our Safety and Security Subcommittee members first that may have questions. The first agenda item is an update and review of current safety policies. So Ms. Ty or Mr. Kingston, if you have any questions for Dr. Kelly or for our school resource officers. Ms.
Madam
Ty?
Chair, I actually will leave it to the experts. I'd like to hear from them about how, I feel that we have a wonderful safety and security policy, and we have great people working with us, but what do we need to tell the parents out there, the grandparents, the children themselves in many cases? What do we need to tell them? How can we get all of our plans to them in, by the way, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So that we can get them information out to the people who need to know, and to give them some assurance that we are doing everything we possibly can. And if we are not doing everything we possibly can, I have been rethinking a couple of things. For example, on the, I voted to have school on the day of the election. And after this happened, it's not that it hasn't happened before, and maybe shame on me for never thinking of it before, but I've been rethinking my position on that and thinking that perhaps we really do not want outsiders and children in school at the same time, and maybe it would be wise not to have school on that day. So I would like to hear from the experts first about what they say we are doing right. What is it we could do better? And what is it that we're not doing at all that we need to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tai. Dr. Kelly or one of our resource officers, or both, would you like to weigh in on those questions?
Yeah,
I thought about this meeting this weekend, and I think for the things that we may be, that we want to talk about as a deficit, maybe, that should be an executive session. I wouldn't want someone out there to know that someone felt there was a, potential issue or something that needed to be addressed that we don't currently do. And I just don't think that's something that we should, I'm not trying to hide anything, I'm not trying to not be transparent, but I don't think some of these issues should be transparent because we're exposing a flaw, if there even is one. And I'm not saying there are. But if there is a flaw or something you gentlemen would like us to change, I'd rather do that in an executive session, maybe not today, but do that in executive session so that we're not kind of leaving ourselves out there as far as, A, B, or C maybe could be done in the future, they're not being done now, and someone look at that and say, oh, that gives me an opening to do something that they shouldn't be doing. It's just a thought, but it was bothering me this weekend, and I just wanted to express myself. Thank you.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, Dr. Kelly.
So, yeah, I'm just going to try to tie in a couple of ideas that Ms. Tai and Mr. Kingston just brought together. So one is information about our safety plans, which Dr. Gallucci and before him, Dr. Vidala, sit with the chief of police and the chief of fire and the SROs and create comprehensive plans for each of our schools that get updated annually. And those plans are shared with staff at the beginning of the school year. They're not something that we publish on our websites for exactly the reason that Mr. Kingston brought up, which is we don't want people with nefarious ideas understanding what our safety protocols and plans are, because it could actually create a safety risk. And so we don't always put all of the information out there, but there is information that we do share, and the school committee will recall that after the last time we had an incident like this, we did host a community meeting, and the chief of police and the chief of the fire department came and spoke at the school committee meeting, and we were able to relay enough information that I think gave families some sense of security without relaying too much information, and that was based on their expert knowledge. I do think that decisions about any changes to the structures of security in the school department are decisions that belong being made between the chiefs of police and fire and myself, and any proposals, of course, that the school committee has would feed into that. But I do think that that's the level where decision-making about any changes should happen, just so that we can make sure that all perspectives are met when it comes to security. As the committee knows, especially those who've been here for a while, there is definitely some tension between creating spaces that might feel physically safe and secure because there are armed security people at every door or at one door or whatever the case may be. And there are some districts that argue for metal detectors at all doors and all of those kinds of protective measures. And there are other schools of thought that I openly ascribe to that focuses on making sure that we are finding resources and supports for kids who are demonstrating any kind of social or emotional disruption that requires they get support elsewhere outside of our schools, that we have certainly adequate safety, such as with our 3 SROs who are in different parts of the city and are assigned to different buildings and can respond as needed, but that our kids come to a building that feels open and friendly and welcoming and engaging. And without doubt, there is work that we have to do in those areas. No doubt about that at all. I'm not trying to pretend like there's nothing we can do to make ourselves better. I just want to caution against the sometimes knee-jerk reaction that we sometimes get to these horrific events, and people think that adding more armed security people is going to prevent this from happening in our schools. I believe that having staff who all love where they work and want to be part of that school community and culture and are vigilant about its safety. Everybody, not just the SROs, everybody plays a role in safety. One of the issues in Texas, from what I've heard after the fact, was that a teacher actually propped that door open while they went out to the car to get their cell phone. And we say time and time again that our doors need to be left secured. People who don't do that are creating a risk. So I won't pontificate any further than that, but I do think that your idea, Mrs. Scravolisi, of having another larger meeting with the police chief, with the fire chief, with the mayor, with our SROs, and maybe even some of our school principals, particularly at the secondary level, or at the elementary, I don't know why I said secondary there, but would be of a benefit to everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I do agree. And for those of you that may be watching, or even maybe our current new school committee members, that large community meeting that Dr. Kelly is speaking of occurred after a horrific event that happened in the United States, and that was in August. That meeting was in August of 2019, and at that time, when the meeting occurred, we did have the chief of police, chief of fire, us school resource officers, as she mentioned, that did give a calming effect to a lot of the parents and grandparents in the community. And as you know, that was August of 2019, and we were had planned on continuing more safety meetings to ensure the public as to what was going on in our schools, and then COVID hit, and we weren't in school. So, just so the public knows, we are going to continue those meetings. And now, was there a specific question, Ms. Ty, that you wanted the school resource officer to answer, maybe just to give a little bit of sense of calm to anyone watching as to a daily, routine? Yes, Officer Singer.
Just hit the button that looks like a mouth talking.
Can you hear me, Carol?
Yes, I can. Thank you, John.
All right, just for a little reassurance, according to our Revere police procedures, I know the elephant in the room is, why did the cops wait an hour to go in? According to Revere police procedures, we do not wait. My captain, my sergeant, my chief, and my SWAT commander will back this up 100%. We go with what we have. God forbid something does happen in the school, an active shooter scenario, we are going with what we have. If it's myself, if it's Officer Brent, if it's Sergeant Internicola, we're going right away. And I'm sure there'll be many teachers and many people in this building that'll be right behind me. So I hope that gives you a little reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you,
Certainly.
Officer Singer. And, just again, so that the new members and community know, from that meeting in August, we were informed that the police do have maps of the schools. So if there was an incident and there was a pinpointed area where there was an active shooter, our RPD has maps of every single school where they know exactly how to get in and out and which entryway to secure, et cetera. Am I correct with all that? I don't want to be misinformation, but, like I said, all of these conversations are very helpful for everyone in the community. Let me ask, Mr. Kingston, did you have another question on updates or policies right now?
I just had a suggestion, and I was going to ask one of the SROs if they'd come get this, if they don't mind. We recently moved out of City Hall, but I had these panic buttons. They're very inexpensive, and I thought they might be a helpful tool for the school. I know people walk around with walkies and stuff, but not everybody has a walkie-talkie. And it's hooked up to the Century security system, and it goes to their alarm and then goes to the police department. They're fairly inexpensive. I think that was like $40. And it's hooked up to the Century security system, which is already in place at all the schools. And it just gives, someone the ability to call for help if they needed it. No, I'll give that to you. We used to have them at City Hall. We're no longer there, so it's become useless. But I think it's something that, again, Century Security provided it, which does do the security for the school. And it's just something that I think might be helpful, if they were spread out through a building, because not everybody's on walkies, and I think it would be helpful. And I just wanted to bring one to show it to you. They're very inexpensive. If I had them at the credit union, trust me, we don't have a big budget. So just something I would like to think about. Thank you.
Officer I always say it wrong. Intercal. I always miss a vowel. Okay, go ahead.
Sergeant Internicole here. With regards to that, Jay Mazzola from the rec at the police station was working on all the radios in the schools to have communications directly with the police station. So that's in the works, happening as we speak. So that way they can just move the channel from whatever school they're in and get the police station and central dispatch on that radio at the same time. So that is something that, and then we just have to figure out how many more radios to buy, and we've discussed that. So that's happening, to make sure that everyone that needs a radio has a radio and is able to communicate not only within that school department, with the police department as well, and the rec. And the rec has direct access, obviously, which is combined with the fire department. So that would start everything if they had access to that, rather than calling us on our cell or on the radio within that school. But if they just move that dial over, and he's working on, so you won't even have to look at it. You just twist the dial and it'll tell you Revere Police, Revere Fire, Garfield School, Revere High School. So, so you don't have to worry about taking the radio off your clip and trying to find which channel that would be located at. So, but I'm not opposed to extra measures as well, and I'm sure that's something we can all discuss. I also wanted to reiterate what Officer Singer was saying. I am one of the SWAT team leaders and have been for about 17 years. We would never, ever wait for other units. We would go to the call for service and immediately, and we would never hesitate to put our lives on the line for anyone in these buildings. And that's why we're here, for our love of children and the people and doing this job, and we love it, and that's why we're here, and we hope that never happens. And now, only on that regard, I would just say, and I don't want to speak out of line, but we have fire drills for the event of possible fire. We hope that never happens. I think people need to just start thinking about, and we all need to sit down and maybe discuss maybe safety drills and what those will entail and how often and when they occur, and that might be something going forward for the future.
And those were drills that we always had pre-COVID. We're definitely cognizant of students' social emotional needs in all of this too, and making sure that we're able to practice for something we hope will never happen, while ensuring that we're not triggering at the same time. So definitely something that we want to get back to is the tabletops, is what we used to call them, when the group would get together and discuss a scenario, and no one else in the building knew what the scenario was, but would have to respond to it in real time. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Sergeant. I see Aisha is on Zoom with her hand up. Yes, Ms. Milbury-Ellis?
Sure. I'm curious as to what plans we have for teachers and staff to undergo active shooter training.
Dr. Kelly, or would you like to address that question, or one of our resource officers?
Sorry, I'm distracted by, there's just a student who's getting some help right now.
I think he's gonna just be in on the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, great.
Great, thanks.
We have a student member that's joining in for the meeting.
No class this period? Do you have class this period? Oh, okay,
Oh,
gotcha.
well, thank you for
Okay.
joining.
Sorry. Say that again, Aisha, I'm sorry.
Sure. I'd like to know what plans we have for teachers and staff to undergo active shooter training.
I don't think that we have any plans to do that. We do
Is there a
go
reason?
over, we review our safety plans at the beginning of the school year, and we review different aspects of that, like a hold in place, or, different actions we might take based on what the scenario is. But we don't specifically call it an active shooter drill. It could be a lot of different things.
Don't you think we should? Don't you think the teachers, at least? I understand the you don't want to cause any disruption with the kids having 2 years of dealing with COVID and catering to their emotional needs. But at the very least, I would suggest that we have teachers and staff who at least are trained to deal with this specific type of situation.
So we have definitely talked about this a lot over the years, and I know that, for example, some school districts ascribe to ALICE training, and other districts don't. There are a lot of different programs out there. And one of the challenges that we've seen is helping people understand that you're never going to train people to be able to deal with every single scenario that could happen. And we've adopted the policy where if we do training on how to stay calm in a disruptive situation, regardless of whether it's an active shooter or something else, then we can help people understand how to modulate their body rhythms and be able to respond appropriately and not just freeze in a fight or flight response to an inadvertent situation.
So there are other districts that I know have these types of trainings, and part of it would include, gathering the kids and going into a corner of the room. I mean, do we not do any type of training like that?
We do. Like the teachers do work with their classes about moving away from windows, moving into the corner that's away from the door and away from the windows. I don't know.
Dr. Kelly?
Yes.
And please correct me if I'm incorrect in this. If I remember correctly, when we had our large community meeting in August of 2019, I believe it was Officer Turner, who is an ALICE trainer, or he does whatever, he teaches those. And at that time, during that meeting, he did not recommend ALICE training for our staff. And he did obviously have reasonings behind it, and his reasonings for what type of training would be appropriate. So I believe that, having Officer Turner attend our community meeting and maybe answer some of these questions might be a good idea, Dr. Kelly?
Sure. Sure.
But that was discussed at that meeting, and there were a lot of reasonings that Officer Turner gave us for that. And we do have some type of drills, like hold-in-place drills and things like that, that they were leaning towards.
We do a variety of different drills. They're not scripted. They're designed right before they happen so that people are not pre-alerted to what's going to happen. I will say that we have not focused on those during COVID because we were remote for a good chunk of that time. And since we've come back, we have done all of our fire and safety drills, and I know that there were plans for this spring, and Sergeant Attorney Nicola might know this better, but wasn't Richie working on plans to do drills this spring at certain schools? Yeah.
So I'm not going to speak for who now Sergeant Turner, but I did poll the surrounding cities and towns, and it seems like Alice is the front runner of what all the other cities and school systems are using. But that being said, we need to check it out before we just adopt it. And so I'm going to be attending that school. Hopefully, we'll be all attending that school, learning from it, bringing it back here, and we can sit down and discuss it. I did have the opportunity to go to a drill with Dr. Galucci. We got to see it on a much smaller school level, Georgetown, if I'm allowed to say that. And obviously, there was only maybe less than 2,000 people, maybe I think less than 1,000, to be honest with you, in that junior high and high school level. But we were able to observe and see how it worked. And so we took notes from it, what we liked, what we didn't like. And then again, just a matter of going to that training and trying to bring it back to a committee and see if we can adopt that here. So that's in the works as well.
Thank you for that information, Sergeant, and please let me apologize for using the wrong title and not using Sergeant Turner and Sergeant Intercola. I apologize. I'd also like to make a note that Chief Callahan has joined our meeting. Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, now at this time, does Mr. Ferranti, do you have any questions regarding agenda item number 1?
Oh, I'm all set right now, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rizzo, do you have questions? No questions from Ms. Rizzo. We also have one of our students in attendance. I didn't know, it looks like you have a note. Did you have a question for us?
I was supposed to talk about the school schedule and like just in all the schools that you guys have like control of. That's what I was.
What is your name?
Jeffrey.
Oh, Jeffrey, okay. All right, did you email me today about that?
No.
Mel did.
I got about 11 of them.
And,
So that wouldn't be at this meeting, that would be at the regular meeting, which you're welcome to stay and listen anyway. But the next regular meeting is June 17th. You want to come back and talk to that?
Jeffrey, I plan on having something with the it's about the policies and schedules. I think that's what I read. So we're gonna try to maybe have something and students can come discuss it with us informally.
How did you get here? Who told you to come to this meeting?
Dr. Ortega.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey had questions about some policies and procedures about scheduling that we've deferred him to come back to a different meeting for, but you're welcome to continue and stay here with this one if you'd like. Oh, Ms. Milbury-Ellis?
Yes, I have a question for both Sergeant Internicola and for Sergeant Singer. I'm curious as to whether, in their view, there's anything more that we can be doing, or any policies that we can implement that would further secure our schools and our children.
So I do think, I know that Susan mentioned that we were going to have a larger meeting with the police chief and the fire chief and the mayor and others. And I feel like that's a question that belongs addressed at that level. So I would respectfully ask that you hold off on that until we have a chance to talk to their superior officers.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Okay, if there's no more questions on that, we'll move. Who has their hand up? Oh, Ms. Ty, sorry.
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But I think what really needs to come out of this is, what's the next step? And the next step is a meeting with the fire chief, with the police chief, an analysis of current policies and procedure, and recommendations for future policies and procedure. Those are just general statements. And I think we probably, as soon as we can set it up, the sooner we can set it up, the better people would feel about our movement toward continued safety for our children.
Thank you, Ms. Ty.
I'm sorry. Did you say that Chief Callahan was present? I'm on my phone, so I can't really see.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so can I direct my question that I had towards him?
That's the same question?
Correct. I want to know if there's anything further that we can be doing, if there's any additional policies we can implement, if there's anything on our end that we can do to further secure our children and our schools.
We can ask Mr. Callahan if he's, Chief Callahan, if he'd like to speak to that, or, you know, like Dr. Kelly said, we do want to have a large-scale meeting with all the different pieces of security that all work together. That could probably answer those at a better, you know, have a better understanding with everyone working together. Chief Callahan?
Good afternoon. I'm going to say we're going to review and reassess every single thing that we're doing. And if there's things we can change and make adjustments, that's what we're going to do. But I think there should be definitely a bigger, more comprehensive meeting involving all the people in the city, the police, the fire, the school department, and whomever else, so we get on the same page and we can make some corrections and adjustments. There's always room for improvement. We do a pretty good job here. and we have for many years, but we can assess things and learn from other incidents that have gone on and what we can do a little better. But yes, we're going to do a comprehensive review and try to make some changes if we need them.
Thank you, Chief
Thank you,
Callahan.
Chief Callahan.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions on agenda item number 1, I'll move to agenda item number 2 is, I said that twice, additional SRO and security staff. Obviously, the whole committee feels strongly about this, and, sadly, we do have to say it falls around staffing and budgeting. If we don't have the budget and there aren't officers that are available to be school resource officers, it's something that we have to continue to work on, but I'd like to ask any of my committee members if they have any questions regarding this. Mr. Kingston or Ms. Ty? Mr. Kingston?
Chief, I'm sorry to make you move again.
Kingston?
From talking to you directly and just knowing the police officers as I do, I think we'd all love to add another SRO, but unfortunately, you just don't have the manpower. And maybe if you said that so people would understand how difficult it is to hire police officers, and even for your current staff, in addition to trying to get another maybe SRO for us at some point. If you could just talk about that a little bit, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, we would love to add another SRO or two to the complement that we have now with the schools, but we're having some challenging times with staffing, hiring police officers, and the other issue is getting them in the training academies. The next academy is in August. It's already full. We're trying to get people into September, a September academy, and that's kind of up in the air. We're trying to get seats. So we're definitely in challenging times. And just currently, if we can talk, a little bit about the awful incident in Texas. What we've done, a little bit of an adjustment where, after talking with Dr. Kelly, we've made adjustments where we've assigned all the sector cars to be at the area school that's in their sector and respond to calls from there, just to put, the public and parents at ease that the police are, around the schools, and we're paying attention for any activity that may be unusual. And also the SROs are in the schools every day, and we're trying to be more proactive as much as we can.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief Callahan. Let's see, Ms. Ty, do you have any questions on agenda item number 2?
No, I don't. I would just like to add a thank you to Chief Callahan, who was there in the beginning when Chief Terrence Reardon came into the schools and said, look, we'd like to be here. And there were a lot of people who were opposed to that. But in fact, it has been a wonderful partnership with the police. I know they have challenges just as we do in hiring people. COVID has made everything twice or 3 times or multiple times more difficult. And we know that everybody's working harder than they should have to be working. So I appreciate all the support that we get from the police, all the way from the city administration, from the mayor down. Dr. Kelly is priceless. And Dr. Gallucci is right up there with her. And certainly Dr. Garcia and Dr. Macaba, all of whom, instead of focusing just on their own job, focus on everything that they can do to keep kids learning in a safe environment. I'm really proud to be part of that, and I look forward to a report that will come out after we have the next large meeting, and I hope that having everybody there will put people's mind at ease as much as we possibly can in the world that we live in. We all know that the answer is control of guns. That doesn't seem to be in the offing at any time soon, which worries me terribly, and I'm sure all of you. So thank you to everybody who has stepped up and who has always stepped up. and we do keep the welfare of our children first. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Mr. Ferrante, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Gravellisi, I noticed that you wanted to hire more security staff. Do we have a number in mind that we're looking to potentially add?
We've never really discussed a number. What we've discussed in the past is, having extra security at schools, possibilities of hiring security staff that may have some past experience, just say retired corrections officer, retired security officers, people that have a trained eye in the field versus, it's great that we hire a lot of community members, but it would be nice to have people that have a trained eye. So that's something we've had discussion with, and I feel that if there's need for extra security staff at any of the schools, Dr. Kelly would, of course, inform us of that if there was a lack of security. And like I said, the conversation has come about of having security, like I said, that has a trained eye in the field.
And we have added a number of security positions, especially at the high school, over the last year. And we'll assess again with the principals during the summer to make sure that they feel like they have adequate security, both at the high school and at the middle schools. I feel like our elementary schools are well covered. And certainly not all of our security people are trained in security, as you mentioned. We have been working with the SROs to provide training for our regular security staff, and they have had meetings with all of the security teams in each of the buildings that they supervise. So they have been able to provide guidance and help our security staff understand what exactly they should be looking for. A lot of our security people are highly effective. Some of them are trained the way that you're saying. And like with all jobs and positions, there might be a couple where principals should be taking a second look at effectiveness and making some decisions along those lines. But for the most part, and I don't know if anybody wants to speak to this, but for the most part, our security staff is pretty well skilled.
Thank you for that information, Dr. Kelly. It's nice to know that our security staff does receive some training from our police department. It's reassuring to know that they're going through a process. It's nice, maybe you can keep us more up to date on what those processes are. Ms. Rizzo, did you have a question?
Not necessarily a question, well, I did until Dr. Kelly covered most of it. But I did want to start off with, in a day and age that so many of our school committees throughout the state want to do away with their SROs, I keep reassuring that although training is very important, the personalities of the men and women that hold these positions are, to me, more important because you're building relationships with our students and they feel comfortable. So I have to say, I am so grateful that in Revere, we do have this relationship with our students, our staff, our SROs throughout. And so my question was going to be, the people that we do have as security in front of each of our school, what type of training do they get and how often? Unfortunately, I've been told by 2, not much. They haven't had any in a couple of years. I wasn't sure if it was because of COVID, but I just wanted to know how much and how in-depth could it possibly be? Do
you know what school they were at, those 2 that you spoke to?
I think one was just transferred, so I'm not really sure. I was going to look at the minutes.
Okay.
But, without saying anything, I would have to look at the minutes of where that person got transferred to. So
Okay, and the other person?
I think they went from a para into that position.
Okay. Because I know the SROs met with all of their teams at the beginning of this year. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that.
Well, even if, I know it's too much right now, but if someone could at least let us know at the next meeting, the depth of the work that is done with them, so that they need to feel comfortable doing their job. And so with the training or the help that they get from the SROs is very valuable. So hopefully maybe at the next one we can know something. But thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Ms. Rizzo. That's a great question, and it'll be a great piece of information at our comprehensive community meeting. And also, thank you for mentioning the fact that despite a nationwide push to eliminate school resource officers, Revere has embraced our school resource officers, and we hear nothing but positive, and how the community wanted to keep our school resource officers. And that comes from parents, grandparents, and students that are all really just like very happy with everything our SRIs do for us and the relationships that they build with our students.
Can I enter that? So just adding on to what Mrs. Gravellisi just said, I am always reminded of when George Floyd was murdered, and the upset that rightfully caused across the country. And I'm not super savvy with social media, but the mayor did make me get an Instagram account so that we could have a town hall with students. And we did, and we were talking about how troubling those events were, and just trying to help kids navigate those challenges, how, it creates so much internal dissonance when something like that happens. And one of the things that the kids said repeatedly was how much they loved, and they named Officer Singer. It was high school kids, so no offense to Brennis, who was with us at the time. Joe, I don't think that you were here. I think it was Caffarelli at the time, but they just talked about how the half-day hoops program let them get to know him as a person, and that they feel really comfortable talking to him and going up to him. And, since then he started the boxing program, which is middle school and high school. Half-day hoops is too. But, that's the kind of piece that I'm talking about. When we build relationships with kids and make them feel welcomed and included and not othered and not set apart and not different and not inferior and not disrespected, we can go a long way to making sure that they have a happy school experience and help connect with and be part of a positive school environment.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Sergeant?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm fairly new to the school system, even though I've been a police officer in the city for 18 years, and my office is at the Garfield, and security there is Matt Cogliandro, and he pretty much trained me there and gave me the ups and downs of the building and what goes on. He's on top of things over there and very informative, and he made my transition, I must say, very easy at that building, because it's one of the older buildings. And he gave me not only the security safety plan that I still have in my office that I reviewed with him, but going over the nooks and crannies of that building and what to pay attention to. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that to all of you. And that's one of many great personnel that we have working in team with the SRO. So I just wanted to mention.
Thank you, Sergeant Interacola. Do we have any other additional questions on agenda item number 2 from any of the committee members? Oh, yes, Officer Singer.
I'll keep it quick, but one of the best safety preventions we can have is preventing an incident before it happens. So what I urge you is talk to your kids, be on top of them, ask them if anybody posted something out of the ordinary today. So that's going to be a big deal. We could prevent these incidents before they happen if we just say something. We started a new anonymous tip line at the police station, so we can utilize that. Or, like you said, you feel comfortable coming up and talking to me, a school committee member or a teacher, just get it out there and let us look into it more. So that's a big thing. Just the best security measure we could take is just preventing it before it happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Singer. If there's no more questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is update on security cameras. Obviously, myself and I'm sure other school committee members have fielded calls from concerned parents about, how many cameras we have, so on and so forth, and the conditions of them. Obviously, for safety reasons, we do not disclose locations of cameras and how many we have, but, I just wanted to add in for public information that we have approved, and this summer we'll be installing and updating additional cameras. We have 14 cameras going to RHS. We'll have 5 at the Hill that will replace some problematic cameras. We have 7 cameras at the Garfield, 7 additional, 8 additional at Beachmont, and 8 at Lincoln. So that's a total of 44 additional cameras and/or updates to existing ones. And once again, those will be installed in the summer for security reasons where, they are to be in undisclosed places. Dr. Kelly, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I'll just add that we do work with the SROs and principals in determining where those additional cameras are needed. So there is that group that you mentioned that we anticipate will be installed this summer, but I understand the joint grant that we did with the police department just got approved, and there is a line item in there for a number of school cameras as well. So that'll be even more cameras. I'll try to get an update on that for the next meeting.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Do any of the Safety and Security Subcommittee members have a question on agenda item number 3? Ms. Ty? No?
No, thank you. I look forward to an update at the next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Kingston?
No, I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Rizzo? No. Mr. Ferrante? Ms. Milbury Ellis?
No, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. And then the 4th agenda item is something that came up. Ms. Ty had mentioned it earlier about rethinking safety on election days, recommendations about having school closed. I didn't know if any members had any additional comments on that. I think it's something that we'd probably have to visit at a committee of the whole meeting to make a decision on that. But do we have any additional comments or questions regarding safety and security on election days? Mr. Kingston?
I think I would recommend that the subcommittee possibly vote just to have the election day off that we currently have scheduled school. And obviously, the full committee would have to vote on it, but at least we reported out favorably that we may want to not have school that day in the interest of public safety.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to move a recommendation to the committee of the whole at our next school committee meeting to have our schools closed on all election days. Is that a correct wording of that, Ms. Ty?
I would narrow it down
Okay.
and say simply for the calendar for next year that we're coming up with, rather than to make, without some further analysis. I wouldn't make it such a broad statement. I would limit it to changing the calendar for next year on election day. It shocked me in a way about how I had not thought of it before, and I'm not sure if anyone else had, but that this is the time we certainly have brought before us that we do not want anyone else in the school, like propping open I heard that too, that some teacher propped it open the door. So, and I know that used to routinely, when I was in the staircase at 306 at Revere High School, that happened routinely with the doors, both with teachers and students propping them open. And so things like that that's what makes me think about there might be other ways too. So I would narrow this to simply the calendar for next year.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Motion by Mr. Kingston and seconded by Carol Ty. Can we have a roll call on that motion to? Discussion. Ms. Rizzo?
So I understand the question, I would just hate to use a tragedy like what happened last week to correct a calendar flaw. So does this mean anytime we have an event in the school, we should just close it? Or do we use adequate security as people come in? And I don't mean according to an ID, because an ID doesn't let us know if they're a rapist or a porn person or a killer or even a thief. But I went to Susan B. Anthony this past week. There were people coming in, people coming out. Do we stop doing all those things because it's the public? Do we stop the parents from coming to their spring concerts because it's the public? Because we're stopping the public from voting in our schools that they pay for. So I think I would hate to use a tragedy, again, for a flaw that may have been made in the calendar. And I really, if you do it for one, you do it for all. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Rizzo. And of course, all members have the right to, give their input on motions that are made. Can we have a roll call on the motion?
Can I say something?
Oh,
please?
yes, of course. Go ahead, Ms. Milbury Ellis.
Sure. I guess my issue with the calendar and voting on that day is more so, I was looking for an alternative as to why we're not using our other public buildings, and I really don't feel as though I got a sufficient answer as to why alternatives can't be used, other than the schools are newer and there's air conditioning and there's technology that could be used in the future, I guess, for voting. So if this is going to go to the committee of the whole, I would like to hear why it is we're not using, or we can't use any other buildings as opposed to using our schools as right off the bat. So if we can consider that, and if somebody could provide information regarding whether or not we could use other buildings as opposed to using the schools, then that would be great.
Thank you, Ms. Milbury Ellis. And, we can maybe get that information from others that are, more informed with that. We have Mr. Ferrante? Oh, Ms. Ty, sorry.
That's okay. Unfortunately, in life, in every aspect of life, we do learn by tragedy. Sometimes we learn by the good things that happen too, but more often than we learn by negative things. Hopefully they're not all tragedies, such as the one we're dealing with right now, and unfortunately have been dealing with. That's the reason I wanted to narrow it down to simply the election cycle in the calendar for next year. I didn't want to make it go on forever. That I thought that I would feel comfortable just saying that it would be for next year's calendar, and that would be a continuing discussion as we look at safety protocols, as we look at changes that we need to make. Is that something we need to make? Ms. Milbury Ellis, spoke eloquently about wanting to be in there and all of that, and I think that's really the essence of my reasoning. So I would repeat that if the motion reads that it is only for the next year's calendar, then I support it wholeheartedly, as I seconded it.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Mr. Ferrante?
Thank you, Ms. Gravellisi. My only question is that if you're just going to do it for the primary in the regular election, what happens if we have a special election, like we're having one now in July? What happens if we have one next year? Let's just say it's March, and let's just say Ward 4, just using that for an example, where we voted the Hill School. Are we going to shut down the school for the day, or are we shutting down the whole city for the day? Just on a special election, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrante. I believe these are all questions that can come up at our Committee of the Whole meeting when the Committee of the Whole will actually be taking a vote on this.
Right.
So maybe these are some questions that we can bring forward and have answers for before that Committee of the Whole meeting when it will be voted on, which would be June 7th. Oh, June 21st. So, But I want to thank all the committee members for their questions and concerns. Can we have a roll call on just this motion that will just bring it to the committee of the whole?
Mrs. Gravellisi?
Yes,
Mr. Kingston?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
thank you. That motion passes, and that, like I said, will go to the committee of the whole for the June 21st meeting. Any of our members that have questions that we need answers to, maybe we can get those prior to the meeting or discuss them that day and have the answers for you.
I know that some of them are about election stuff, so if you, I'll actually have Robin look at this, but I can, do you want me to have the election commissioner come to answer those? I mean, I know he met with you before, but.
Yeah, and would the members, if the members would like the election commissioner to come
No.
and join us, they don't feel it's necessary?
Well, I think Ms. Milbury Ellis had some questions about
Right.
why we're not in other
Pub-
buildings.
city
I
buildings.
can't answer those questions.
I can't answer those questions either.
Yeah, I think I posed that question the last time, but I mean, if this is going to come to a vote, I just want to have all the information in front of me. And I just want to understand why we're using the schools right off the bat when we're so conscientious about the days and the days that we're taken from kids and the days the kids have to go to school. If there's an alternative, if there's no alternative and the schools are the only, place in certain wards and that's the way it is, then I'm okay with that. And that's the answer. But I just feel as though I'd like to get some information and I want somebody to tell me, well, yes, we can do it in this ward, but we can't do it here. And this is the reason why. And as of yet, I haven't heard that yet. So that's what I'd like to have answered. So perhaps the commissioner can answer those questions and tell us why we cannot use other buildings as opposed to the schools. I just don't think if there's an alternative, then we should use that and the kids should be in school. If not, then that's a different story, but at least give us the information so we can make a wise decision.
Thank you, Ms. Milbury Ellis. And that's, like I said, probably be a question that the mayor and the election commissioner could answer much better than we could if it's lack of availability and lack of space. Do we have any other questions from any of the other members?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, I would just once again like to thank Officer Singer, Officer Brennis, Sergeant Interacola, I got it right that time, and Chief Callahan for taking the time out of your day and joining us for this really important meeting. And we look forward to working with you at our next community meeting that will be much larger and have more answers for everyone in the question. So motion to adjourn by Ms. Ty.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kingston. Meeting adjourned at 1:05.